It's Wednesday, July 11th. I'm Paul Joseph Watson. This is INFOWARS Nightly News.
Tonight on the INFOWARS Nightly News, Paul Joseph Watson speaks with Campaigning Against Camera Surveillance's Steve Jolly about the war on privacy worldwide. Plus, the United Nations Arms Treaty and what it means for our Second Amendment rights. Then, is the internet rewiring our brains? All that and more on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
Top story tonight, garbage collectors trained to spot terrorists before RNC. Garbage collectors are being trained by police to be on the lookout for terrorists in the run-up to this year's Republican National Convention in Tampa, Florida. The terrorist depicted in the role-playing scenario used to train garbage workers is a young white woman, while her victim is a Middle Eastern man. Quote, anarchists, terrorists, plain old thieves and creeps. Your new foe wears work boots and fluorescent vests. Meet the garbage men, reports the Tampa Bay Times, noting that police are involved in training garbage collectors to, quote, spot suspicious activity on their routes in preparation for this August's RNC in Tampa. And this story goes on to talk about how the garbage men all get a special certificate and a special little baseball cap for graduating as snitchers into this Waste Watch program. And again, as we talk about tonight in the interview with Steve Jolly, this is the application of the panopticon system on a societal level. This is about empowering blue-collar workers using the Delphi technique to somehow think that they themselves have a stake in the police state, that they're upholding America. And it's the same with, you know, Janet Napolitano empowering Walmart shoppers to spy on each other. Highway Watch and all these other programs that foster this tattletale society by getting the very, you know, minimum wage blue-collar workers to do all the legwork and then reward them with some kind of special certificate like they're ace spies working for the homeland. And as all the academic studies have proven, and the historical record has proven, the only thing that this ever does is breed distrust, resentment, fear, and paranoia, because obviously that's the purpose. And remember back in 2002, there was this big uproar about Operation Tips, which was the genesis for all this. You know, the cable guy spying on you, the postman spying on you, basically anyone who comes near your property. And that was disbanded, that was defunded by Congress, precisely for the reason that you can't have Americans spying on Americans. And yet it continues today under all these different guises, many of them run by Homeland Security, you know, right down to the hot dog vendors at the Super Bowl. And is this what America's really supposed to be about? Americans spying on each other for the homeland? And you saw the DHS-funded study last week, which went absolutely viral after it was on the Drudge Report, defined those, quote, reverent of liberty as terrorists. And of course, in this training program with the garbage workers in Tampa, the terrorist is depicted as a young white girl, while the victim is a Middle Easterner. So they've moved on from the mythical threat posed by Middle Easterners. They've already moved from that paradigm. Now the real threat has been reclassified as the American people, mainly as the politically active middle-class American, which seems to feature prominently in all these characterizations of terrorists. And this garbage program in Tampa is just another escalation of that. And, you know, if we're going to have a sophisticated domestic spying network, why are we empowering, you know, garbage collectors to run it? At least in East Germany, they had the Stasi. At least in Russia, they had in the Soviet Union, they had the KGB. So again, it's all about empowering these blue-collar workers because that's your everyday people. They want to get everyday people spying on each other. It doesn't make anyone safe. All the facts have proven it. All the studies have proven it. Has no effect but to create fear, paranoia, distrust, because that's precisely what they need, what they require to unfold their police state. Next story by Kurt Nimmo, Infowars.com. Pentagon takes over civilian duties and sprays mosquitoes in Florida. Officialdom in Miami-Dade is working with the U.S. Air Force to spray mosquitoes. This newest round of mosquito control involves a large C-130 cargo plane based in Ohio to spray Homestead, ARB, and communities of Doral West, Sweetwater, Kendall, Homestead, Florida City, and areas of East US 1, where heavy concentrations of mosquitoes have been reported, CBS Miami reports. So another move in this reorientation of the military to its involvement with domestic affairs. You remember the Washington Post story, the Northcom infestation of America by 2011, 20,000 active duty troops conducting law enforcement and crowd control duties. Now we have numerous examples of that. And in fact, US Chief of Staff of the US Army in a recent Foreign Affairs piece, that's of course the Council on Foreign Relations Journal, wrote an article to that effect in which he outlaid the fact that the main focus of the US military is to reorient its purpose, its directive, its role to domestic law enforcement. So yet another example of that in Florida. Fox News, UN arms treaty could put US gun owners in foreign sights, say critics. A treaty being hammered out this month at the United Nations with Iran playing a key role could expose the records of America's gun owners to foreign governments, and critics warn eventually put the Second Amendment on global trial. International talks in New York are going on throughout July on the final wording of this so-called arms trade treaty, which supporters such as Amnesty International, USA, say would rein in unregulated weapons that kill an estimated 1,500 people daily around the world. And of course, most of that figure is made up by all these rebel clashes, which people like Amnesty International are actually involved in funding and profligating through their propaganda. It's got virtually nothing to do with the situation in the United States, but they're using it as a kind of end run around the Second Amendment. And critics, including NRA's Wayne LaPierre, who remember said that basically if he got a second term, Obama would seek to virtually nullify the Second Amendment completely. LaPierre warned the treaty would mark a major step towards the eventual erosion of the US Constitution's Second Amendment gun ownership rights. Americans, quote, just don't want the UN to be acting as a global nanny with a global permission slip stating whether they can own a gun or not, LaPierre said. It cheapens our rights as American citizens and weakens our sovereignty, he warned in an exclusive interview with Fox News. So again, the UN has been at this for years. More than a decade ago, they came out with a similar treaty which said that private ownership of firearms threatens the legitimate power monopoly of the state. What is a power monopoly of the state? It's a dictatorship. And in dictatorships, the general public are not normally armed with private guns for their own personal protection. New York Times reports Russia sending warships on maneuvers near Syria. Russia said Tuesday it dispatched a flotilla of 11 warships to the eastern Mediterranean, some of which would dock in Syria. It would be the largest display of Russian military power in that region since the Syrian conflict began almost 17 months ago. Nearly half of the ships were capable of carrying hundreds of Marines. The announcement appeared intended to punctuate Russia's effort to position itself as an increasingly decisive broker in resolving the anti-government uprisings in Syria, Russia's last ally in the Middle East, and home to Tartus, its only foreign military base outside the former Soviet Union. So again, the central question driving this whole Syria issue is if or when Russia will back down, just like they did with Libya. I've predicted that they will eventually back down and cut some kind of deal. But it seems that Hillary Clinton's effort to lecture the Russians into doing just that this past weekend has been met with a forceful response. Numerous warships now on their way to Syria. And as commentators have pointed out, Syria is to Russia what Israel is to the United States. So while Russia's presence is likely to delay a planned NATO-led attack, the fact that Putin's always talking out the other side of his mouth, telling the Western media one thing while telling the Russian media and the Middle Eastern media another, is a hint that Russia's having second thoughts on this. But the fact that they've sent out these warships to perform aggressive maneuvers again brings the question to the fore. But again, if Russia does step down like they did with Libya, they'll be empowering the NATO-backed terrorist rebels to take over the country of Syria and, of course, install themselves as puppets of NATO. So, just interesting to see how Russia's going to respond. People are still baffled as to their behaviour because, as I said, sometimes they say one thing and do another. Sometimes they tell different media organisations different things depending on where they are and what kind of propaganda they're looking to project. So we'll continue to watch that one with interest. Americans' confidence in television news drops to new low. This is out of Gallup. Americans' confidence in television news is at a new low by 1 percentage point, with 21% of adults expressing a great deal or quite a lot of confidence in it. This marks a decline from 27% last year and from 46% when Gallup started tracking confidence in television news in 1993. So, you know, by a score of more than half since 93, Americans have lost trust in the mainstream media. And confidence in newspapers is also down by a half since its peak in 1979. By coincidence, again, we have CNN's ratings dropping to all-time lows as they get caught pumping out the war propaganda, specifically in relation to Syria, with other network news channels having the same problems. We had the report about a week ago, CNBC, the financial network, all their major news programs are losing viewers. And so it's not only a testament to the truth movement and, you know, the growth of the alternative media, but these news networks and their corporate backers really have no one to blame but themselves. If you ever get a guy on mainstream media that even tells a little bit of the truth, you know, people like, whether it be the Young Turks guy on the left who was on MSNBC, you know, Lou Dobbs on the right with CNN, their existence in that sphere of the establishment media is finite. If they dare just tell a little bit of the truth, they're given literally a couple of weeks and they're gone. And, you know, remember the Young Turks guy was told directly, despite the fact he was getting outstanding ratings for an MSNBC show, that, quote,